All right, everyone, are you ready for the next two chapters of To the Future, Ben Franklin? So they had just talked to Ben Franklin and told him they were from the press, and Ben Franklin got worried and was rushing them out of the back door. So chapter 5 is called Lightning Rod Ben. Benjamin Franklin leaned against the back door of the State House. His hand trembled as he pulled out his handkerchief. Are you all right, sir? Annie asked. Fine, I'm fine, said Ben, wiping his face. But I cannot be seen with you. It would be a disaster. We must move away from here. Jack and Annie started walking with Ben toward the front of the building. But, sir, why would it be a disaster? Asked Annie. All the delegates have sworn an oath of secrecy, said Ben. I'm sorry to say they've already caught me saying a few things outside of our meetings. An oath of secrecy, said Jack. Yes. We believe in freedom of the press, said Ben, but we need to make a plan first. Not a word of our plan should be printed in the Gazette. We agree on a plan. Oh, dear. The Gazette, said Jack. Yes, the Pennsylvania Gazette, the very paper that I once owned. Oh, wait, said Annie. We don't work for the Pennsylvania Gazette. No, but you said we were from the press. I know, but we were talking about the Frog Creek News. It's our own little paper, mine and Jack's. We're the only ones who read it. She's right, said Jack. It's just a game that we play. We pretend to be reporters from the Frog Creek News whenever we meet people. Ben Franklin stopped walking. He looked hard at Jack and Annie. His expression changed from worry to relief. Then he laughed. I believe you, he said. My goodness, your little game nearly gave me a heart attack. I'm sorry, said Annie. At least we got his attention, thought Jack. So where do you live? Ben asked. Frog Creek. It's miles away. We're tourists, said Annie. Our parents wanted us to study history. Tourists? I'm afraid I do not know that word. Oh, well, you can think of us as visiting scholars, said Jack. Emperor Marcus Aurelius of Rome had once called them visiting scholars on their last adventure, and Jack liked the sound of it. Ben seemed to like it too, and his face brightened. Ah, visiting scholars and so young. That's delightful, he said. Come, let us walk, scholars. I'll show you Philadelphia's free library. Ben started up Chestnut Street. He still used his walking stick, but now he had a little skip in his step. People waved cheerfully at Ben from wagons and carriages, and he waved back. He seemed to know everyone. It's important for visiting scholars to see the very first public library in the colonies, Ben told Jack and Annie. But I do apologize for the heat. Don't worry, you didn't cause it, said Annie. Ben laughed. I like your wit, my dear, he said. I like yours too, said Annie. Ben stopped and pointed his walking stick at a brick building with high arched windows. That's it. That's our library. I was the founder. Library members and visiting scholars can borrow books anytime. That's great, said Jack. It looks a lot like our Frog Creek Public, Annie began, but then Jack stopped her with a quick shake of his head. He knew there were hardly any public libraries in 1787. Hey, Lightning Rod Ben, a boy shouted from a passing wagon. Is it hot enough for you? Ben waved at the boy. Why did he call you that? Said Annie. Oh, I invented lightning rod, said Ben. I'm surprised you didn't know that. See, there's one. And he pointed to a long metal rod that rose up from the roof of the library. The lightning hits the rod and then passes through a wire into the earth, right? Said Jack. Exactly, said Ben. So there's Ben Franklin pointing his stick, and then here's the library. If you look carefully, there's the lightning rod. That tall thing sticking out. Remember, we learned about lightning rods. Yes, it keeps the lightning from passing into the building and causing a fire, said Annie. My word, you are both very bright, said Ben. He seemed happy and relaxed now. As visiting scholars, what would you most like to learn about on your visit? You, both Jack and Annie said together. Oh my, Ben chuckled. Well, perhaps I could tell you a little bit about myself while we sit in the courtyard of my house. How does that sound? Cool, said Jack. Cool indeed, said Ben. We'll be much cooler under the shade of my mulberry tree. And that takes us to chapter 6, Under the Mulberry Tree. Ben led Jack and Annie down Market Street. Pigs and chickens crossed their path. Horse-drawn carts clattered over the dirty cobblestones. But the heat and smells didn't seem so bad now. We're here. Come along, said Ben. Jack and Annie followed Ben down to the alley to his courtyard. Please sit, said Ben. He motioned to chairs under the shade of the mulberry tree. The same tree that was hiding the magic treehouse. Ah, said Ben, settling into his chair. It's not much cooler here, though, is it? No, but it's nice, said Annie. So, you wish to learn more about me. Ask me anything. Well, Let's start with when you were a kid, said Annie. Ben laughed. Excellent starting place. When I was a baby goat, he said. My father made candles and soap, and I was one of 15 children. We were so poor that I only had 2 years of school, and then I had to go to work. Whoa, what did you do? Said Jack. I worked in my brother's printing office. At 17, I left Boston and came to Philadelphia all by myself, and I started my own printing shop. Soon, I published a newspaper called the Pennsylvania Gazette. Then I created the first public library in North America, the one that you just saw. I wrote and printed a best-selling yearly pamphlet called Poor Richard's Almanac. And then I started the first fire company in Philadelphia, and I started the first post office. I invented the Franklin wood stove. I introduced cobblestones and street lamps to the city. I founded a college and a hospital. I grabbed electricity from the clouds in my famous kite experiment, and that led to my invention of the lightning rod. I supplied the army in the French and Indian War. I was elected to the Assembly of Pennsylvania. I was elected the first Postmaster General of all the colonies, and I helped to write the Declaration of Independence. I was the American representative to England, France, and Sweden. I negotiated a treaty with England, and I became the governor of Pennsylvania. Ben stopped to catch his breath. Oh, goodness, is that all you've done? Said Annie, joking him. The three of them laughed. I knew I liked you, said Ben, but since you asked, there actually are a few more things I've done. For instance, I invented bifocal glasses. By the way, you have very nice glasses, Jack. Thanks, said Jack. And I invented a new kind of ship's anchor, said Ben. I created a candle that makes a bright white light and lasts longer than any other candle. I've also written about water spouts at sea and the origin of northern storms. I've kept journals about dolphins, crabs, and the moon. Wow, said Annie. There was silence for a moment. Oh, I almost forgot, said Ben. I also studied ants and pigeons. Then they all laughed again. Then Ben sighed. Whew, I'm afraid I must stop there because I'm growing quite tired of talking all about myself. Well, what are you doing these days? Jack asked nervously. He knew Ben didn't want to talk about the meeting at the State House. But to Jack's surprise, Ben leaned forward in his chair. Can you keep a secret? He whispered. Yes, said Jack and Annie. They leaned closer. I tell you this in absolute secrecy, said Ben. At the age of 81, I am a delegate to the Constitutional Convention, working to help frame a constitution for the United States. No, whispered Annie. Yes, whispered Ben. He sat back in his chair and grinned at them. So when will the Constitution be ready? Said Jack. That I do not know, said Ben. He sighed. In truth, dear Jack, I don't know if it's ever going to be ready. Why? What do you mean? Said Jack. The delegates disagree on so many things, said Ben. I worry about the stormy debates we have. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Honestly, right now, I myself do not plan to even sign this document. You don't, said Annie. You don't, said Jack. Ben sighed again. He put his glasses back on and looked at them. No, children, I fear I do not. And that takes us to chapter 7 called Now's the Time. And we know that's part of Jack and Annie's mission, right, is Morgan told them that he needs to sign the paper. So Ben Franklin in real American history did sign it, so it's important that they make sure that he does sign it. So tune in tomorrow and we'll find out what happens. Hopefully they can convince Ben Franklin to sign it. All right, love you, friends. I'll talk to you later. Bye.